cortisone is good for you or not. But to take a shot every other ball game is more than I wanted to do, and to walk around with a constant upset stomach because of the pills, going to be high half the time during a ball game because you're taking painkillers now. That's I don't want to have to do that.
The Dodgers had a redheaded announcer by the name of Red Barber. He was good. But then a few years later, another redhead showed up, and I thought he was very good. I'm not sure I realized how good he was until 1958, when the Dodgers from Brooklyn became the LA Dodgers, moved into the Coliseum.
The sad truth about Sandy Koufax is that he became almost too great for his own body to survive. Right now in 2026, he is 90 years old. Baseball just gave him a brand new honor. People still clap for him. People still say his name with deep respect. But many fans still ask one strange question: what happened to Sandy Koufax? He was not old when he left the game. He was not slow. He was not failing. He was the best pitcher alive. Then one day he was simply gone. I am Mason, and this is Baseball Icons. On April 23, 2026, Sandy Koufax was named the winner of the 6th Annual Baseball Digest Lifetime Achievement Award. This award honors people who showed great character and gave huge things to the sport of baseball. Past winners include legends like Willie Mays and Vin Scully. Now Koufax stands beside them. At 90 years old, he still draws cheers. He still feels larger than life. And if this story already has you wondering how a legend like this could vanish at his peak, give this video some hype, because Koufax's story only gets more shocking the deeper we go. Think about that for a moment. A man who left baseball almost 60 years ago is still being honored today. People do not forget him. They still talk about him at dinner tables and in baseball parks. So why does his name always come with a question mark? Why do people say his career felt cut short, even though he was once the best in the world? The sad truth is not that Koufax faded away because he lost his skill. He did not get worse. He did not get pushed out by a younger pitcher. He left because his own body could not keep paying the price for his greatness. He was not an old player hanging on too long. He was not washed up. He was not losing his touch. He was at the very top of the mountain. Then he walked down on his own 2 feet before anyone could push him off. To understand why a man would walk away from the top of the world, we have to go back to the very beginning. Before Sandy Koufax was a legend, he was just a kid from Brooklyn who was not even sure baseball was his game. Sandy Koufax was born Sanford Braun on December 30th, 1935, in Brooklyn, New York. As a boy, baseball was not his big love. Basketball was. He was tall, strong and quick, and he loved playing basketball more than anything else. He became captain of his school basketball team at Lafayette School. When he went to the University of Cincinnati, he walked onto the freshman basketball team. He played well too, scoring close to 10 points a game on average. Baseball almost did not happen for him at all. He joined the university baseball team for a strange reason. He simply wanted to go on a spring trip to New Orleans with the team. That is how one of the greatest pitchers in history got his start. Not with a dream of fame, not with years of careful training, just a young man who wanted a fun trip with his friends. Think about how strange that is. Most legends grow up dreaming about the sport they will one day rule. They practice for hours every single day, from the time they are small children. Sandy Koufax was not like that at all. He was a basketball player first, with no real plan to become a baseball star. He was raw, he was young, he had a huge arm, but almost no control over where the ball would go. He looked nothing like a perfect baseball machine. He looked like a tall, athletic kid who happened to be holding a baseball for the first time. But once he picked up a baseball, something amazing happened. His arm was different from other arms. It was fast. It was wild. It was something scouts had never quite seen before. At a tryout for the Pittsburgh Pirates at Forbes Field, Koufax threw the ball so hard that he broke the thumb of the bullpen coach, who was catching him. The coach's name was Sam Naron, and his thumb simply could not handle the power coming out of this young man's arm. Branch Rickey, one of the most respected men in baseball, watched this happen. He turned to his scout and said this was the greatest throwing arm he had ever seen. in his life. Soon after, Koufax tried out for the Brooklyn Dodgers. A scout named Al Campanis watched him throw, and it left him stunned. He later said it felt like seeing something almost too special for words, the kind of feeling you get standing in front of a great piece of art for the very first time. The Dodgers signed Koufax on December 14, 1954. He was only 19 years old. He received a $14,000 signing bonus and a $6,000 salary. In 1954, that was a lot of money for a teenager. But here is the strange twist. Because his bonus was so big, baseball rules at the time said the Dodgers could not send him down to the minor leagues to learn and grow slowly. He had to stay on the big league team right away. This was called being a bonus baby. This rule existed to stop rich teams from hiding talented young players in the minor leagues, away from other teams. But for a player like Koufax, it created a strange problem. The minor leagues exist for a reason. They give young players a safe place to make mistakes, to fail in front of small crowds instead of big ones, and to slowly build up the muscle memory needed to control a pitch. Skipping that step is a little like being handed the keys to a race car before you have ever driven on a quiet street. The power is there. The skill to control that power is not, at least not yet. Most young pitchers spend years in the minor leagues. They make mistakes far away from the bright lights. They slowly learn how to control their pitches. Koufax never got that chance. He had one of the most powerful arms anyone had ever seen, but almost no experience using it the right way. The very thing that made teams fight to sign him also pushed him into the big leagues long before he was ready. To make space for him on the roster, the Dodgers sent a young pitcher named Tommy Lasorda down to the minor leagues on June 8, 1955. Years later, Lasorda would become a famous Dodgers manager. But back then, he had to step aside so the new kid with the amazing arm could take his place. Koufax made his first appearance in the major leagues on June 24, 1955. His first real win came a few months later on August 27, 1955. In that game, he threw a 2-hit shutout against the Cincinnati Reds and struck out 14 batters. For one night, fans saw a flash of what he could become, but that flash did not turn into steady success right away. Far from it. From 1955 to 1960, Koufax struggled. He was often wild. His pitches sailed high, low, and all over the place. He did not get steady playing time, and the coaching he received did not fix his control problems. Fans remember his no-hitters and his awards today, but the young Koufax was a very different player. He was frustrated, he was unsure of himself. He often walked more batters than he wanted to. By the end of the 1960 season, Koufax was so discouraged that he seriously thought about quitting baseball completely. Picture that for a second. The man who would later be called one of the greatest pitchers ever was ready to walk away in his 20s. Not because his arm hurt yet, but because he felt like a failure. If he had quit then, the world would never have known the name Sandy Koufax the way it does today. For 5 long years, he had flashes of brilliance mixed with long stretches of frustration. He could strike out a string of batters in one inning, then walk 3 batters in the next. His manager and coaches did not always know how to fix him. He had all the raw tools, the size, the speed, the spin, but none of it added up to steady success. Year after year, fans saw glimpses of something special, then watched it slip away again. For a young man with this much pressure on his shoulders, it must have felt like carrying a heavy weight with no end in sight. He was not lazy. He was not careless. He simply had a gift that nobody, including himself, had yet learned how to control. But everything changed before the 1961 season. A catcher named Norm Sherry and a pitching coach named Joe Becker gave him some simple advice. They told him to stop trying to throw every single pitch as hard as he possibly could. They told him to relax a little. They told him to mix in more off-speed pitches instead of pure power every time. It sounds like such a small change, but for Koufax, it changed everything. Once he stopped fighting against his own body and his own gift, something incredible happened. The wildness faded. The control arrived, and the man who almost quit baseball became, almost overnight, the most feared pitcher in the entire sport. From 1961 to 1966, Sandy Koufax entered a stretch of pitching that very few players in history have ever matched. This was not just good. This was something that left other players, coaches, and fans completely amazed. During this stretch, Koufax became the first pitcher in the modern era of baseball to have an earned run average under 2.00 in 3 different seasons. To put that simply, It means that for 3 separate years, he allowed fewer than 2 runs for every 9 innings he pitched. That is an incredibly small number. He also became the first pitcher in modern history to strike out more than 300 batters in a season 3 different times. His overall strikeout rate was more than 9 batters for every 9 innings, the highest rate baseball had ever seen up to that point. During his peak years from 1961 to 1966, his earned run average sat around 199. Think about that number for a second. Less than 2 runs allowed per game across years and years of pitching. In 1963, Koufax went 25-5 with a 188 earned run average and 306 strikeouts. In 1965, he went 26-8 with a 204 earned run average and 382 strikeouts. In 1966, his final season, he went 27-9 with a 173 earned run average and 317 strikeouts. These were not lucky seasons. These were not flukes. Year after year, batters walked up to the plate against Koufax and walked back to the dugout shaking their heads. His fastball looked like it was rising as it crossed the plate, fooling hitters again and again. His curveball dropped straight down, almost like it fell off a table. His delivery was tall and over the top, with a high leg kick that made the ball seem to come from an impossible angle. Hitters described facing him as one of the hardest things they ever had to do in their careers. Some batters said standing in the box against him felt almost hopeless. They knew the fastball was coming, fast and rising, but knowing it was coming did not help them hit it. They knew the curveball would drop, but it dropped so sharply that swings often missed it completely. Other teams would sometimes plan their whole pitching rotation around the days Koufax was scheduled to pitch, just so their best hitters would not have to face him while feeling tired. Opposing managers spoke about him the way people speak about a force of nature, something powerful that simply had to be endured. He also had a special gift for winning close, low-scoring games. Research comparing him to other great pitchers of his time, like Juan Marichal and Bob Gibson, shows that Koufax had an unusual ability to win even when his own team gave him almost no runs to work with. He could take the smallest amount of support and turn it into a victory. For 6 years, Sandy Koufax was simply on another level. He helped lead the Dodgers to championships. He won multiple Cy Young Awards, the top prize given to the best pitcher in baseball. He threw 4 no-hitters across his career, something almost no other pitcher has done. But here is where the sad part of the story begins to creep in. The very same motion that made him so dominant, that high leg kick, that long reach, that violent twist of the arm, was also slowly tearing his body apart. To understand what was happening inside Sandy Koufax's body, we need to look closely at how he was built and how he pitched. Koufax stood about 6 feet 2 inches tall and weighed around 210 pounds. He had a broad back, long arms and long fingers. These traits gave him incredible spin on the ball. They were part of what made his pitches so hard to hit. His pitching motion was smooth, but it was also extreme. He used a very high leg kick. During his wind-up, he reached his arm so far back that the ball would actually drop down near his left ankle before he threw it. This created tremendous power. It also created tremendous stress, again and again, on his left elbow and his left shoulder. Every single pitch he threw was like putting his arm through a small earthquake. Most of the time, the human body can handle some stress, but Koufax threw thousands and thousands of pitches with this motion, year after year. Slowly, the stress began to add up. It is worth pausing here to really think about what this means. A baseball season is long. A pitcher does not throw just once or twice. He throws over and over, week after week, month after month, for years in a row. Each pitch on its own might seem small, but added together, over thousands and thousands of throws, even a small amount of stress on a joint can turn into something serious. Koufax's body was paying a price every single time he stepped onto the mound, long before anyone, including Koufax himself, fully understood how serious that price would become. The first big warning sign came in 1962. During a game, while batting, Koufax suffered an injury to his hand. It affected the blood flow in his left hand. His left index finger and his thumb turned white. They went completely numb. Doctors said this was caused by something called Raynaud's phenomenon, which happens when blood vessels do not get enough blood flow to certain body parts. By July of 1962, things became much more serious. Koufax developed a major blood clot in his left arm. Doctors were worried. They were so worried that they discussed the possibility of having to remove one of his fingers completely. Thankfully, treatment was able to dissolve the clot and save his finger, but the damage to his arm did not go away. It kept building underneath the surface. By 1964, the problem had moved to his elbow. A Dodgers team doctor named Robert Kurlan looked at his arm and gave it a name. He called it traumatic arthritis. In simple terms, this means the joint in his elbow had become swollen, stiff, and painful from years of repeated stress and small injuries. Looking back now, many doctors believe Koufax also had a torn ligament in his elbow that nobody could properly diagnose at the time. This ligament is sometimes called the UCL. Back then, doctors did not have the tools to find this kind of injury. They could not see inside his elbow the way doctors can today. What they could see was the damage on the outside. His left elbow swelled up to twice its normal size. Over time, his arm became permanently bent. It would not straighten out all the way anymore. His suit jackets had to be specially made, with one sleeve shorter than the other, just so his crooked arm could fit properly. His fingers often went numb. Simple things that most people never think about, like holding a cup, buttoning a shirt, or shaving with his left hand, became very hard for him. This was not just a sore arm after a long game. This was a body that was sending out warning signals, again and again, telling Koufax that something was deeply wrong. To keep pitching through all of this pain, Koufax and his doctors used every tool they had. But in the 1960s, those tools were very limited. There were no MRI scans to look inside a joint. There was no surgery that could fix a torn ligament in the elbow the way there is today. A famous surgery called Tommy John surgery, which repairs that exact kind of injury, would not be performed for the very first time until 1974, years after Koufax had already retired. So instead, doctors gave him a mix of treatments to manage the pain and the swelling, game after game. He took a drug called phenylbutazone to help bring down the swelling in his joints. He received cortisone injections, shots that gave quick but short-term relief from swelling. He used codeine, a strong pain medicine, to dull the pain enough that he could pitch. He also rubbed on a hot ointment called capsulin, which burned his skin on purpose. The idea was that the burning feeling on the surface would distract his brain from the deeper pain in his elbow. Before and after games, he soaked his arm in baths of hot water and then ice water over and over, trying to control the swelling. All of this took a heavy toll on his body. He often felt sick to his stomach. He felt dizzy and lightheaded. He described feeling almost half-drugged while he was out on the mound, pitching in front of thousands of fans who had no idea what was happening inside him. Imagine being one of those fans. You buy your ticket, you sit in the stands, you watch Sandy Koufax walk out to the mound, calm and steady, and you cheer as he strikes out batter after batter. From where you sit, everything looks perfect. You have no way of knowing that underneath his uniform, his arm is swollen, his fingers are numb, and his stomach is churning from the medicine he took just to be able to stand there. The gap between what fans saw and what Koufax felt was enormous. That gap is part of what makes this story so powerful. There is one part of this that is especially heartbreaking. The pain pills did not just dull his pain, they also slowed down his reflexes. Koufax later admitted that he was scared. He was afraid that if a ball was hit hard straight back at his head, his slowed-down body might not be able to move out of the way in time. Think about that. While fans were watching him strike out batter after batter, amazed by his skill, Koufax himself was quietly worried about his own safety on the field. In August of 1965, while he was still pitching at an incredible level, Koufax made a secret decision. He told a sports writer named Barney Collier that the 1966 season would be his last one. He made Collier promise to keep this a secret. So while the whole world watched him pitch one of the greatest seasons ever in 1965, Koufax already knew, deep down, that the end was coming. Every great pitch he threw during those final 2 seasons came with a hidden cost that the fans in the stands could not see. Sandy Koufax was not only respected for his arm, he was also respected for who he was as a person, and one moment in particular showed this to the entire country. Koufax was raised in a Jewish home in Brooklyn by his mother, Evelyn, and his stepfather, Irving Koufax. His Jewish faith was an important part of who he was. In 1965, the World Series was set to begin with Game 1 falling on Yom Kippur, which is one of the most sacred days in the Jewish faith. Koufax made the decision not to pitch that day. He chose his faith over baseball, even with the whole world watching during the World Series. This decision brought a lot of attention. Some people criticized him for it, but for many Jewish fans across the country, It meant something much bigger than baseball. It showed that Koufax stood firmly by what he believed in, even under enormous pressure. At the time, baseball was treated almost like a religion of its own in America. Skipping a World Series game for any reason was almost unheard of. Yet here was the best pitcher in the sport, choosing his faith over the biggest stage in his sport, without apology and without hesitation. For many people watching at home, especially young Jewish fans, seeing someone so famous stand by his beliefs so calmly left a lasting mark. It told them that being true to who you are and being great at what you do were not things you had to choose between. He did not disappear after that, though. He came back later in the series and pitched complete game shutouts in both Game 5 and Game 7, on very little rest. He gave everything he had left in his tired arm to help his team win. Around this same time, Koufax and his teammate Don Drysdale also held out together before the 1966 season, asking for fairer pay. This was one of the early steps toward players having more say over their own careers, something that would shape the future of the sport for decades. Koufax was not just a man with a powerful arm, he was a man with a strong sense of who he was, both on and off the field. Now we arrive at the moment that answers the big question from the start of this video. What really happened to Sandy Koufax? On November 18, 1966, Sandy Koufax announced that he was retiring from baseball. He was only 30 years old. Just think about the season he had right before this announcement. In 1966, he had won 27 games. His earned run average was 1.73. He struck out 317 batters. He completed 27 games on his own without needing relief pitchers. He won his third unanimous Cy Young Award, meaning every single voter agreed he was the best pitcher in baseball that year. And then, at the very peak of all of that, he walked away. Doctors had given him a clear warning. If he kept pitching the way he had been, he risked permanently losing the use of his left arm, not just losing his pitching skill, losing the ability to use his arm normally for the rest of his life. This is the heart of the sad truth. Sandy Koufax did not retire because he was losing. He did not retire because hitters had figured him out. He retired because the only way to keep playing baseball was to risk the rest of his life with a damaged arm. Many athletes wait too long to walk away. They keep playing past their best years, hoping for one more good season, even as their bodies fall apart in front of everyone. Koufax did the opposite. He looked at his own future, weighed everything he had to lose, and made the harder choice, while he still had a choice to make. That kind of decision takes a level of honesty with yourself that very few people, in any walk of life, ever truly have. When the news came out, the Dodgers general manager, a man named Buzzy Bavasi, made a joke to reporters. He said the team was now looking for a Jewish left-handed pitcher with arthritis who had thrown 4 no-hitters. It was a joking way of saying that nobody could ever replace what Koufax had given the team. Baseball wanted more from him. Fans wanted more. History probably wanted more too. But Sandy Koufax chose something different. He chose the rest of his life. And here is where this story turns from sad to something much stronger. That choice to walk away was not weakness. It took real courage to step away from fame, money, and glory while he was still on top. He knew, better than anyone else, exactly when the game had taken enough from him. After baseball, Koufax had to figure out what came next. He chose to try something completely different. Television. On December 30, 1966, just weeks after retiring, Koufax signed a 10-year deal with NBC to work in broadcasting. The deal was worth $1 million, with a yearly salary of $100,000. For the time, this was a huge amount of money, more than he had earned in almost all of his playing seasons. His broadcast work began on April 15, 1967. He hosted a short pre-game show called The Sandy Koufax Show and also worked as an analyst on NBC's Game of the Week broadcasts. But this new chapter did not fit him very well. Koufax was a naturally quiet and private person, talking on camera, being watched by millions of people, and answering questions in front of a microphone made him very uncomfortable. He once said that getting ready for a short 15-minute pre-game interview made him more nervous than pitching in a World Series game. His fame from his playing days also made life harder than ever. He could not travel easily. He could not enjoy a quiet dinner at a restaurant without being surrounded by fans wanting autographs and photos. For most people, that kind of attention might sound exciting. But for someone as private as Koufax, it was the opposite of exciting. It was exhausting. Every trip to the airport, every walk down a street, every meal out became a small performance, with people watching, pointing, and asking for a moment of his time. Koufax had spent his whole life being judged on the mound, where the only thing that mattered was the pitch in his hand. Now he was being watched everywhere, all the time, for simply being himself, and that was a kind of pressure his quiet personality was never built for. In February of 1973, 4 years before his contract with NBC was supposed to end, Koufax walked away from broadcasting too. Just like he had walked away from baseball when it threatened his health, he walked away from television when it threatened his peace of mind. In 2002, something happened that showed just how seriously Koufax protected that privacy. A newspaper called the New York Post printed a gossip item suggesting that Koufax was secretly gay and that he had only helped with a biography about his life if the author agreed to keep his private life out of the book. Both Koufax and the author of that biography, a writer named Jane Levy, were upset by this. Levy said the claim was simply false. At the time, the New York Post and the Los Angeles Dodgers were both owned by the same large company. Because of this, Koufax felt deeply let down, almost like his own baseball family had turned against him. In response, he stopped going to spring training. He stopped visiting Dodger Stadium. He stayed away from all Dodgers events for years. Eventually, in February of 2003, the New York Post printed a formal apology and a retraction of the story. Even so, Koufax kept his distance from the team until that ownership group sold the Dodgers to someone new. After that, he slowly began to reconnect with the organization again. This part of the story is not about gossip. It is about a man who had spent his whole life guarding his privacy fiercely, and who was willing to walk away, even from the team he loved, when he felt that privacy had been broken. Even though Koufax stepped back from the spotlight, he never fully left baseball behind. He simply found a new way to be part of it, quietly, behind the scenes. In February of 1979, Koufax returned to the Dodgers as a part-time pitching instructor for the minor leagues. He worked with young players during spring training and traveled to minor league teams to help them improve. He kept a very low profile. He did not even want his name printed on the back of his jacket. He was not there to be famous. He was there to help. Later on, he helped other teams too, in smaller ways. He spent time as a spring training consultant for the Texas Rangers in 1994. He visited the New York Mets in 2011 to help out informally. From 2013 to 2016, he returned to the Dodgers once again as a special advisor. His coaching style was simple but powerful. He did not try to make every young pitcher copy his own motion. Instead, he focused on small, simple changes. He focused on what was happening in a pitcher's mind just as much as what was happening with their arm. One famous example involves a pitcher named Dave Stewart. Stewart was struggling to find his footing. Koufax gave him one small piece of advice: pull your cap down lower. By doing this, Stewart blocked out distractions and focused only on the catcher's mitt in front of him. This simple change helped create his famous intense stare, and Stewart went on to have 4 straight 20-win seasons. Koufax also became a mentor to Clayton Kershaw, one of the best pitchers of more recent years. He gave him simple advice too, like reminding him to stay tall on the mound, while also helping him stay calm and focused before big games. In 2012, Koufax shared something personal with the public. He revealed that he had been diagnosed with cancer back in 2010, but that treatment had been successful. He has split his time between Florida and Pennsylvania in his later years. In 2025, fans got to see him again, sitting in the stands during the Dodgers World Series run, looking healthy and full of energy even at 89 years old. For a man who spent so much of his life avoiding cameras, it says something that fans were still excited just to catch a glimpse of him in the stands, decades after his final pitch. He was not on the field. He was not throwing out a first pitch or giving a speech. He was simply there, watching the game he loved, the same way millions of other fans were. And yet for so many people watching at home, seeing him there was a reminder of just how far his story stretched. From a young's bonus baby with a wild arm, all the way to a quiet, healthy man in his 90s, still loving the same game that had once nearly broken his body. In June of 2022, the Dodgers honored him with a bronze statue at Dodger Stadium, showing him in the middle of his famous high leg kick. The statue includes words about teamwork and a shared goal to win. Nothing else mattered, and nothing else would do. It stands not far from a statue of his old teammate and friend, Jackie Robinson, made by the same sculptor. Two men from two very different chapters of Dodgers history now stand close together for fans to see, forever frozen in motion, forever part of the story of the team and the sport they helped shape. And now, in 2026, at 90 years old, he has received this brand new Lifetime Achievement Award, placing him alongside some of the most respected names the sport has ever known. So what happened to Sandy Koufax? He started out as a basketball player who almost did not play baseball at all. He struggled for years, with a powerful arm and no real control. He nearly quit before he ever became great. Then, almost overnight, everything clicked, and he became one of the most dominant pitchers the world had ever seen. But that dominance came at a price. His own arm, the very thing that made him great, slowly broke down underneath him. He pitched through pain that fans in the stands could never see. He took on a heavy mix of medicines just to get through each game, and at only 30 years old, he chose to walk away at the absolute top of his game to protect the rest of his life. After that, he tried fame on television, did not like it, and walked away from that too. He built a quiet life, guarded his privacy fiercely, and only came back to baseball later, on his own terms, helping young pitchers in quiet ways that most fans never even noticed. The sad truth is not that Sandy Koufax disappeared. The sad truth is that baseball only got a short look at how great he truly could have been. But the beautiful truth, the one that really matters, is that he had the courage to walk away before the game could take everything from him. He chose his health, he chose his peace, he chose his own life. And almost 60 years later, the world still remembers him, not as a man who vanished, but as a man who knew exactly when and how to leave on his own terms. Today, when people look back at his statue in Los Angeles, or hear about his newest award in 2026, they are not just looking back at a player who threw a baseball faster and better than almost anyone else. They are looking at a man who proved that walking away at the right moment for the right reasons is not the end of a story. It can be the part of the story that people remember the most. Sandy Koufax did not need to keep pitching to remain a legend. He simply needed to be honest with himself, brave enough to make a hard choice, and strong enough to live with it. That, in the end, is the real answer to what happened to Sandy Koufax.